Λοιπόν, καλησπέρα σας ξανά. Καλώς ορίσατε στις ανοιχτές τηλεδιαλέξεις του Ανοιχτού Πανεπιστημίου Κύπρου, που οργανώνονται από το Μεταπτυχιακό Πρόγραμμα Θεατρικών Σπουδών. Σήμερα έχουμε μαζί μας τον Dr. Roberto Di Tuccio από το Πανεπιστήμιο του Durham, ο οποίος θα μας μιλήσει με θέμα «Cause I'm still gonna be me», η επιτέλεση της ταυτότητας από την Ελλάδα στη Ρώμη και ακόμη πιο πέρα. Σήμερα είναι ένα πάρα πολύ ενδιαφέρον θέμα, το οποίο ενδιαφέρει ταυτόχρονα μελετητές θεατρικών σπουδών που είναι στο πρόγραμμά μας, μελετητές της κλασικής αρχαιότητας, αλλά και σύγχρονους δημιουργούς θεάτρου, διότι με αφορμή χαρακτήρες των εταίρων στην αρχαία ελληνική και ρωμαϊκή γραμματεία, ο Ρομπέρτο θα εξετάσει το ρευστό όριο ανάμεσα στην κοινωνική επιτέλεση και την προσωπική ταυτότητα. Η μεθοδολογία του συνδυάζει τη μελέτη της επιτέλεσης, το performance studies, με σύγχρονες μαρτυρίες εξεργατριών, αντλημένες από ψυχολογική και ιατρική έρευνα. Μέσα από την ανάγνωση των κειμένων αυτών, των αρχαίων αυτών κειμένων, υπό το φως σύγχρονων προσεγγίσεων και αντιστρόφως, δηλαδή βλέποντας τη σύγχρονη επιτέλεση υπό το φως των αρχαίων προτύπων, καλούμαστε να επαναστοχαστούμε έννοιες όπως η υποκειμενική δράση, η επιτέλεση ρόλων και η αντίσταση. Και όλα αυτά δεν είναι μόνο θεωρητικά, γιατί ο Ρομπέρτο δουλεύει πάνω σε ένα καινούριο θεατρικό έργο με αφορμή αυτή την ερευνά του, για το οποίο θα μας μιλήσει στο τέλος. Ο Ρομπέρτο έλαβε το διδακτορικό του δίπλωμα στις κλασικές σπουδές και την αρχαία ιστορία από το Πανεπιστήμιο του Ντάραμ τον Ιούνιο του 2025. Κατέχει πτυχίο και μεταπτυχιακό στις κλασικές σπουδές από το Πανεπιστήμιο Σαπιέντζα της Ρώμης, όπου εστίασε στον ελληνιστικό μήμο και στην αναπαράσταση των γυναικών στα μημίαμβα του Ηρώδα. Η έρευνα του εξετάζει την αρχαία σεξουαλικότητα, το ρωμαϊκό δίκαιο και την επιτέλεση στη λογοτεχνία της αυτοκρατορικής και ιστρορωμαϊκής περίοδου. Στο διδακτορικό του έργο ανέλυσε τη λογοτεχνική προσωποποίηση φανταστικών εργαζομένων του σεξ στο Λουκιανό, Αλκύφρονα και Αριστένετο, διερευνώντας τον τρόπο με τον οποίο οι ρόλοι τους στέμνονται με τους κοινωνικονομικούς λόγους. Διαθέτει αρκετές επικείμενες δημοσιεύσεις που επεκτείνουν αυτή την προσέγγιση στον ελληνιστικό μήμο, τη ρωμαϊκή ελεγεία και τη δυναμική του πολιτισμού στη γραμματεία της ελληνορωμαϊκής περίοδου. And we are very excited to have you here, Roberto. Thank you for being here with us. So I will give the floor to you, and I think I made, as you heard, a really short introduction into your paper, and I teased the fact that you're also working on a creative project that you will talk about towards the end. And without any further ado, I'll give the floor to you. Do you want me to share? I will share the screen.
Yes,
Yes.
thank you, Magdalena,
Yes.
with the English presentation. And while you share your screen, I would like to say something. Σας ευχαριστώ για την πρόσκληση. I hope this was right. But thank you very much. Yes, thank you. That's great. We can see that. I think actually, if you want, I can take the control. So
yes, we'll give you control.
Thank you very much. And I was saying thank you very much, Magdalena, for the invitation, for the very warm introduction. It's actually the first time that I speak not in the UK. And I'm very excited to be virtually between Cyprus and Greece. So thank you very much to all of you for being here. And thank you to all the familiar names I can see in front of me for being here too. Thank you very much. So I think I can control the presentation. That's great. Okay, we'll get here later. Oh God, I'm going too much farther. Okay. So thank you so much for the invitation and thank you for being here. Now it's Friday night, it's evening. I think that most of you are going to have a nice plans for the weekend. So I'll try to keep this lecture very short. I'm talking for about 30 minutes and then I would be very happy to reply to your questions. With Magdalena, we might say something on a project that we have in mind. And but I would also be happy to dialogue with you. How many of you have a work self and a home self? A version of you that you switch on for your job or for social media? Today, we are going to look at how this idea of performing an identity was a matter of survival and strategy for a group of women in the ancient world known as hetairai. Hetairai are always referred to as companions, elite escorts, or sex workers. They are actually more than that. They are complex and blurred identities where person and character are in continuous tension and where personal and work self need to be carefully balanced. When we talk about hetairai, we think of a profession. Instead, these figures are women who work as hetairai. So, just like you might switch on your work or academic self, these women had to become performers. Their job, their survival, depended on putting on a mask. And what is fascinating is that we can see them thinking about this performance in fictional texts, in particular, dialogues and letters. Tonight, I want to provide you with some examples of how these ancient texts can create this self so that you can have a taste of how hetairai thrive and flourish between the 2nd and 6th century CE. Magdalena's students have been studying how comedic types from Menander influenced Roman theater. Centuries later, the same types, especially the hetaira, was revived in a new form. The fictional letters of Lucian and the dialogues of Lucian and the fictional letters of Alciphron and Aristenetus are the text on which I am focusing tonight. And it's here that we see these characters come to life in a new way. Their works offer interesting and unexplored insights on the identity of fictional hetairai. While reproducing the narratives of new comedic stereotypes, these characters employ performance as a tool for survival, a way to navigate the tension between personal desire and societal expectations. Hetairai are sex workers who continuously need to balance personal and professional identity. In this talk, I'm going to argue that these fictional women were expert performers. They used role play not just as a job skill, but as a way to protect their inner self, navigate power dynamics, and sometimes, tragically, fail to keep their boundaries up. And surprisingly, their stories speak directly to research on modern sex workers and emotional labor. As for methodology, I will be very short here, I promise. I ground my analysis in performance and social studies, with a particular focus today on the social aspects of hetairais performances. I use the term performance because I consider hetairais dialogues and letters and the events they narrate in them as performative acts. Specifically, I draw on the anthropological framework of Richard Schechner, who defines, or Schechner, I've never understood how his surname has to be pronounced, who defines performance as restored behavior. According to Schechner, individuals repeat actions previously enacted by others. Significantly, performance is not limited to the theatrical stage, but is a pervasive aspect of everyday life. In this context, Lucian, Alciphron, and Aristenetus reproduce comedic characters, but they also render hetairai self-conscious of their theatricality, which extends also beyond the stage. Thus, this performance is not just a literary device. These fictional women are shown taking control. They use performance to make their own choices and reflect on their own lives. This conscious engagement with their sense of self, facilitated by dialogues and letter writing, unveils the complex interplay between the personal and public aspects of their identities. For this reason, I also incorporate recent scholarship in social humanities, drawing on the works of Arlie Oshield, Tila Sanders, and Gillian Abel, to highlight how Lucian, Alciphron, and Aristenetus hetairai strikingly reflect the concerns of contemporary sex workers. This interdisciplinary approach not only deepens our understanding of literary portrayals, but also underscores the relevance and resonance of these narratives with real-world issues faced by sex workers. Hetairai are theatrical identities, a condition not only tied to their traditional roles in middle comedy and new comedy. Becoming a sex worker entails an identity transformation. Part of this performance even involved their names. Many had speaking names, like Philocremation, which in ancient Greek means lover of money, instantly signaling their professional role to the audience, or in this case, the client. Some names highlight their sexual, physical, or personal attributes. I give you the translation from the ancient Greek, and we find names like Little Calf, Goldie, the Crazy One. Such names serve to objectify the individual who is at the service of men. Beyond this, names also establish a professional identity that must be distinguished from the personal one, as I will soon demonstrate. When working, hetairai play a role. A key text that helps define them as performers is the sixth of Lucian's dialogues of the hetairai, dated to the 2nd century CE. Notably, in this dialogue, a mother, Crobyle, instructs the young Corinna on how to become an outstanding hetaira. As you can see in the first text, she says, let me give you the rest of my instructions about what and how to behave with men. Corinna must embody specific traits to construct a professional persona. She must alter her natural appearance with makeup and fine clothing, as you can see in the third text. Regulate her laughter, speech, appetite, and even sexual performances. In other words, Corinna must be an actress, become another from herself. She puts on a mask and deliberately enacts the appropriate gestures and language to assume a role and to manipulate wealthy men. The construction of hetairai as performance is then pivotal in Alciphron and Aristenitus that depend on Lucian. The first case is letter 416, Lamia to Demetrios. Lamia is perfectly aware of juggling two identities. On the one hand, she is a woman with genuine affection for her lover and anxiety about being worthy of him. On the other, she is an unprejudiced sex worker. Lamia articulates the intricate balance required to perform these roles. In her letter to Demetrius the Besieger, she acknowledges that women working as hetairai often employ a great artifice or a great trick. It's in the text 1. The women who work as hetairai have a great trick. The purpose of this artifice is to delay their lover's satisfaction and pleasure, thereby increasing their financial gain. Crucially, Lamia highlights the transition from an ordinary woman to a woman that works as a sex worker. She does not use the name of the profession to indicate such women, but she says those. Sorry, I'm just lost. Yes, of course. The women who, she says, not the prostitutes, the hetairai, she says the women who work as hetairai. So those that are in the condition of being a hetaira, which suggests that being a hetaira is not an intrinsic but a temporary condition. So being a hetaira is a job, a performance with a defined beginning and an end. This detail is significant as it illustrates how theatricality in these texts extends beyond the literary sphere into sociological consideration. In fact, Lamia fears that as she is, hence the sex worker, she may not be worthy of the king who has conquered her heart. In other words, she is incredulous that a king could desire a woman who works as a hetaira, underscoring the social prejudice attached to her profession. Nonetheless, Demetrius is aware of her profession and still grants her freedom of speech, as you can see in the third text. Lamia's mention of freedom of speech, a term with explicit political connotations describing one of the privileges of classical Athenian democracy, liberates the figure of the hetaira. Freedom of speech allows hetairai to exist beyond the constraints of performance. Lamia expresses gratitude to her lover for enabling her to move beyond the social mask and act without artifice. Fundamentally, the rigid set of behavioral rules hetairai must follow to seduce men, including controlling their speech, can be set aside, making space for the freedom to express themselves spontaneously. With Demetrius, Lamia can be a woman, putting aside the social role of a sex worker. When speaking to the king, she needs no scripts or masks. Lamia's point is further emphasized when she writes that she is not made of stone, and this is in the second text. Lamia is saying, I am not a statue. Think about that. A statue is beautiful, but is cold, silent, and unchanging. Lamia is saying, on the contrary, I am a living, feeling woman, not just an object for your pleasure. This metaphor aptly conveys the static and rigid identity that sex workers are expected to embody. When you put on a mask, you are identified with that, at least in theory. Although Lamia has permission to meet other men and continue working as a hetairai, she rejects this social role. In fact, she explicitly refuses to perform the character of the hetairai and tell lies as they do. And this is actually in the first text. I will not play the part of the hetairai, nor will I lie, like others do. The juxtaposition of crafting and creating a role with the concept of lying is particularly revealing. Lamia acknowledges that sex workers employ theatrical techniques to construct a social persona, distinct from their authentic selves. Thus, hetairai emerge as both artistic and social constructs, with limited room for personal freedom. As extension of the theatrical tradition filtered through Lucian's dialogues, hetairai are reimagined as theatrical characters within the epistolary form. However, this rigid semiotic system risks subsuming the woman behind the performance, leading to a state of role conflict, a psychological and social dissonance that arises when an individual struggles to reconcile conflicting roles. This condition occurs when a subject fails to embody the behavior expected of them by society, resulting in an internal struggle over identity and authenticity. Maintaining clear boundaries between personal identity and social persona is essential to performing the role of a sex worker. When Eumusos, which means good singer, attempts to persuade Philocremation, the money lover, to sleep with him by playing melodies, she responds that hetairai only serve money and cannot be deceived by music. I read it because it's very fun. She says, you can't win over a hetairai by playing a flute. Nor can you attract them with a lyre if you don't have money. We are slaves only to profit, and we are not bewitched by melodies. So why, boys, do you break your jaws with blowing on the pipes? Kitara music won't help you. She wants money and gifts. Philocremation's speaking name, lover of money, as we said several times, reinforces this notion. Her unique goal, like that of other hetairai, is financial gain. Thus, the concept of performing a role to construct a social persona is central to her profession. It is no coincidence that Philocremation states that she learned how to be a hetairai from her pimp sister. Like Corinna in Lucian, Philocremation has learned the hetairais life. As you can see in the second text, I used to hang out with my older sister, a pimp who instructed me in the erotic trade. So she was not born as a sex worker, she became one. She's performing a role. Again, the performance of specific acts is intrinsic to this professionalism of sex work, and Philocremation underscores the idea that each social role has its own semiotics. Consequently, both sex workers and clients must adhere to established codes of conduct to ensure the smooth execution of the hetairais role. It is like entering a theater to assist a performance. The client pays, the woman puts on her mask to provide her services. This necessity explains why the hetairai must remain distinct from the woman behind the performance. Chelidonion effectively articulates the necessity of assuming a mask, and we are again in Aristaenetus. Facing the challenge of defending her profession against the jealousy of her partner, she writes an intense letter explaining two crucial aspects of her work. First, she clarifies that she plays the role of the hetairai and merely pretends to love the man she engages with in order to earn money. To make a living as a hetairai, so to get money, I keep the company of young men and pretend to love those I am with. in order to increase their desire. The choice of the verb pretend actually, in English, which means to perform, is not incidental. The construction of a social persona is intrinsically tied to theatricality. The verb, now here I will be a little boring probably, but the verb in ancient Greek, hypokrinomai, which is translated with pretend, has also a technical connotation. For instance, in the writings of someone called Aristoteles, and in the comments to on Aristophanes' comedies, the verb hypokrinomai indicates performance and specifically indicates the actors. This linguistic nuance adds an intriguing dimension to Calidonio's identity. Ancient scholars like Aristotle or the commentators of Aristophanes analyze comedy from an external perspective, clearly distinguishing between real and fictional personas. In contrast, Calidonion is not just acting. She is also analyzing her own performance. She is like an actor who stops in the middle of a play to explain her technique to the audience. She is both the character and the director of her own life. Calidonion also bridges past and present. The necessity of dividing agency into distinct roles is closely linked to the concept of emotional labor. Introduced by sociologist Arlie Hochschild, emotional labor refers to the process of carefully managing emotions to perform a job without allowing personal feeling to interfere. This principle is particularly crucial for sex workers who must ensure their professional success with clients while avoiding personal involvement, but also applies to all those professions which involve service to the public. Arlie Hochschild applied this observing in particular flight attendants, but it's true also for academics, for teachers, for waiters and waitresses, shop assistants. Calidonion enacts what has been called manufactured identity. It has been called so in social and medical studies. In doing so, she creates a fiction, as we have seen, for her clients. The concept of manufactured identity was introduced by another sociologist called Tila Sanders, who defines this as the creation of a secondary persona as a business strategy. Hetairai generate income by pleasing men and conforming to their stereotypical expectations. A manufactured identity mirrors the tacit agreement between actors and their audience in the theater. Hetairai provide their client spectators with exactly what they expect to see. Consequently, private and professional life remain and must remain distinct spheres. Calidonion, with her simultaneous external and internal focus on the difficulty of balancing private and social roles, illustrates that Hetairai are not merely sex workers. Rather, they are women who, among other characteristics, can become sex workers. This notion directly challenges the idea that Hetairai are only theatrical types, unemotional prostitutes. They assume a mask as other professionals do, teachers, doctors, customer assistants. But what happens when the mask slips? What happens when the performance fails? Myrtale, in another letter of Aristaenetus, which I have not included because it's too long to be quoted tonight, shows us the dangers. She did not just pretend to love her client, she actually fell in love with him. And in this world, in the prostitution, in the world of sex workers, that was a professional disaster, but also a personal one. She has spoiled her client by loving him excessively and openly displaying her affection. In her case, the personal self has overtaken the professional role, leading to profound emotional suffering. Notably, she recognizes her own failure to establish clear boundaries earlier and ultimately bids farewell to the men, so at the end she triumphs over the men. By reasserting the distinction between work and personal life, Myrtion allows the professional sex worker to triumph over the heartbroken woman, but this comes after a lot of suffering. This outcome reinforces the paradigm that Krobyle teaches Corinna in the sixth of Lucian's dialogues of the Hetairai. The Hetaira must remain unattainable and focused only on financial gain. In this perspective, love is portrayed as a disease, one that not only threatens a sex worker's emotional stability and well-being, but also jeopardizes her career. Roleplay is thus not merely a tool for constructing a professional identity. It is a necessary strategy for protecting these women's health. Remarkably, Alciphron and Aristaenetus, but also Lucian, use concepts that align with contemporary sociology. They depict characters who recognize and deliberate on different approaches to sex work. While some hetairai are at ease with role-playing, Chelidonion has been abandoned by her lover. As she writes her letter, she weeps and declares that she loves only Philinos. Sorry, Myrtale, I was thinking of Chelidonion, so the letter that I have not included. She pleads for him to punish her in whatever way he sees fit, so long as he does not end the relationship. As often happens, both the hetaira and the woman delete their agency to make a man happy. Beneath the visible sorrow expressed by Chelidonion's tears while she writes her letter, it is possible to discern the deeper consequences of emotional labor mismanagement, a phenomenon that today manifests in real sex workers and other workers, in burnout, anxiety, and depression. As a result, Chelidonion's identity is fraught with contradictions. She never fully embodies either the role of a woman or that of a sex worker. Instead, she remains the object of another's desire. She becomes a performer on a stage, a mask, a fixed identity designed to entertain and conform to the expectation of a male audience. This is the impact of performance in fiction Chelidonion refers to. Regardless of what playing this role demands of the woman behind the mask, she must continue to entertain and please the man. Hetairai thus emerge as a product of society's desire. Crucially, these women must undergo constant shifts in identity to perform their social roles, and ensure their own survival. The hetaira, as a social construct, aligns with semiotic model perpetuated by literature across time, reflecting the expectations that each society imposes upon women. Consequently, sex workers are compelled not only to conform to external demands, but also to suppress their personal aspirations. Roleplay, therefore, becomes more than a theatrical device. It extends beyond the stage to shape the fictional lives of Lucian's, Alciphrons, and Aristaenetus hetairai. Comparable dynamics recur in later literature and film. Just a couple of examples. In Alexander Dumas' La Dame aux Camélias, 1852, Marguerite Gautier embodies the tension between agency and constrained characteristics of ancient courtesans. Her consuming love for Armand ultimately destroys her, exposing how social judgment distorts and confines personal identity. She's not only a sex worker, and if you have read the novel, you know, she's way more than that, but she's remembered as the poor prostitute, died alone and very sick, and also suffering for this man. I'm very sorry because I'm just noticing that I might have spoiled the book for the people who have not read it. Sorry. Then there is Gary Marshall's Pretty Woman of 1990, played by Julia Roberts and Richard Gere. A very nice movie, which I suggest you. Very Hollywood movie, to be honest, but still nice. Vivian Ward's streetwalker persona is revealed as a social performance. Only by dismantling the prejudices surrounding class, profession, and respectability, embodied in Edward Lewis' world, a very rich man, can her genuine self and emotional agency emerge. In conclusion, I have argued that performance is central to the way ancient writers construct the figure of the hetaira. Never entirely separated from her theatrical origins, the hetaira reappears in the letters of Alciphron and Aristaenetus as a performer within a new literary medium. Role-playing, in this context, is not merely an aesthetic feature, but a means of survival. It allows these women to negotiate the fragile boundary between personal identity and societal expectation. Ultimately, these sex workers transcend their role as fictional creations. They become dynamic agents who shape their own stories through the adoption of different social masks. In giving voice to their letters, Alciphron and Aristenitus grant them a kind of, and also Lucian, Lucian, Alciphron, and Aristenitus grant them a kind of freedom beyond the stage, a life that is not only theatrical, but socially meaningful and profoundly human. Therefore, when you leave here today and rush towards the weekend and switch back to your students, work, friend self, or even the academic one, remember Lamia, remember Calidonion and Myrtale. Their stories remind us that the performance of identity is not a modern invention. It is an ancient human strategy for survival, for connection, and for protecting the most essential part of ourselves, the person behind the mask. Thank you.
Thank you, Roberto. It's fantastic. How do we escape the presentation?
I think I can stop controlling and you can press escape or escape. Oh, no, sorry, Magdalena, you have to stop sharing the screen. Okay, here we are.
Okay. Okay, sorry. Thank you so much. That was fascinating, very moving. Really opened up again. We have had this discussion before, but every time it sort of touches my heart and it opens up a new ways of interpreting antiquity and realizing how some contemporary ideas have been around for a very long time. And thank you also for the contemporary paradigms that you mentioned, that from cinema and from books. And actually, La Dame aux Camélias is a great example because there is so much emphasis on societal judgment there and on her. I mean, the play, there's a play version as well, a contemporary American play by Bartlett, I think, which the whole first scene is all about, is an auction of her amassed sort of fortune after she dies, and everyone is all about money. So the play begins in this auction, and it's all about how she was about money. But then, of course, the play reveals
also the furniture of the bed where she died.
Yes, and how much it is a kind of a performance that when she becomes vulnerable, it is her downfall. So as you say, this is really, really fascinating. And I really like the idea also how the society is feeding the stage and vice versa, and how now that when you ended it, you put focus on the fact that these women might have been based on real women, these characters, and they kind of in a way existed, and they must have had a relationship with their real life counterparts. And it's a very moving thing to think about. But do we have any questions from the audience? And also I can translate. Αν θέλετε να ρωτήσετε στα ελληνικά, μπορώ να μεταφράσω. Οποιαδήποτε ερώτηση.
Magdalena, if you allow me, while people think if they have questions, we could say what we have in mind after 2 years, but I don't know if we'll ever manage to do that.
We will, because things take time, and we have. But
if someone gets me,
let's talk about it. Yes.
Yeah. No, I know that a lot of Magdalena's students are here and possibly colleagues, but when I met Magdalena, it was in 2023. She was in Durham, and she was doing a very exciting project that was performing a play based on the history of the Phoenician version of Dido, and it was love at first sight. So I went to rehearsals. Also, my colleague and friend Julia was there, and we were so mesmerized because it was so nice to see how the students could create something so concrete after reading the text and making the text their own. And I actually, watching Magdalena directing the students, I was writing some of the things I have told you tonight, which were part of my dissertation. But regardless of this, I asked Magdalena, and we have been talking about that since then, Magdalena, why don't you direct a version of Lucian's dialogues of the Aethyrae? Back then, I had started to write something that could be staged, so not just a translation of Lucian's dialogues, which would be, of course, great, because you have not seen a lot because I only focused on the 6th dialogue, but these texts are actually very contemporary. And in some occasions, this is a personal feeling that, unfortunately, I will never be able to demonstrate. I wouldn't be surprised if Lucian was, or at least for this text, if Lucian were a woman.
Okay.
Because the way he describes the feelings of sex workers is so engaging with what you could expect on women. And you can say this when you read the research on women today, not just sex workers, also other kinds of professions, that I wonder, how could he know all these things about the female world? So I asked Magdalena to direct this performance. The problem is that, of course, universities are always problematic in terms of funding. Magdalena was in Durham just for 3 months. I'm not in Durham anymore myself. So hopefully in the future, we will be able to produce this work. And so I think that Magdalena will be great in directing this. I think she's the right person to direct this performance, but also I think that it would also be great from all of you that are engaging with Magdalena, but also with what she teaches and works on more than me, because I'm very versatile and very pop, but I am a classicist more than, and I mean, I just have the side of the scholarly side and not that of theater directing and performing. It would be nice to know if you have any ideas and how you would imagine as an audience this play. But I'll now shut up, so if you have any questions, please do, and I will be happy to reply.
I also want to add, and also you wanted in your play, your text, you wanted to be inspired by contemporary research on sex work, no?
Yeah, that was the idea.
But I mean, maybe
you know, Magdalena, it all depends on funding.
It does.
I don't know if someone gets me in a university in the next 10 years, maybe, I don't know.
It's always about money when we make theater, but let's not talk about
also
that. It's
when
depressing.
You do academia, unfortunately.
What is not depressing and what is very inspirational is that, and maybe I'll transition to Greek. Είναι ακόμα ένα παράδειγμα πόσο ο αρχαίος κόσμος μπορεί να είναι μια αστήρευτη πηγή έμπνευσης για σύγχρονη θεατρική δημιουργία. Αυτό που είπε ο Ρομπέρτο για το project στο Πανεπιστήμιο του Ντάραμ ήταν πάλι ένα αποτέλεσμα της διπλής μου ακαδημαϊκής ιδιότητας στις κλασικές σπουδές και στο θέατρο. Οπότε, γιατί τα λέω αυτά, είναι επειδή είμαστε σε πρόγραμμα θεατρικών σπουδών, αλλά αυτό το πρώτο εξάμηνο μας απασχολεί πάρα πολύ η αρχαιότητα. Και θέλω πάντα να λέω στους φοιτητές ότι δεν είναι μόνο ένα κουτί που πρέπει να βάλουμε ένα τίκο, ότι το περάσαμε, μάθαμε 5 πράγματα για το αρχαίο δράμα, για το ρωμαϊκό δράμα. Η μελέτη της αρχαιότητας είναι κατά ακρίβεια συνδεδεμένη με το DNA του θεάτρου και του performance και γενικά οι ανθρωπιστικές σπουδές είναι πολύ βασικές για τη σύγχρονη θεατρική δημιουργία. Οπότε ευελπιστώ ότι μέσα σε αυτά τα αρχαία κείμενα θα βρείτε έμπνευση για ατέλειωτες εκδοχές στη σύγχρονη εποχή. Αυτό ήθελα να πω. I'm just saying that it's a proof of the never-ending inspiration from ancient texts that we can get. as contemporary theater makers, because these plays, these texts came from a time when people were beginning to think about these things that we're thinking about now, and they organized their societies in a way that is very similar to now. So, and in fact, we can learn, I think, a lot about antiquity by looking at it through the contemporary lens. I think it's sort of a it's a two-way relationship as well. But anyway, any questions? Anything else? Well, I wanted to ask you about another movie. Did you see? What did you think of what's it called? Anora, the film that won the Palme d'Or, I think, the last year, 2 years ago.
Pandora?
Anora?
No.
It was about contemporary sex worker in New York. I think that's the name. Was it Anora? Was it? That was a really interesting debate. Hearing the protagonist, the actors talk about portraying a sex worker. But there is a question, I think, by Frosini.
Γεια σας, τι κάνετε?
Yes.
Magdalena Frosini is the colleague and friend. I organized the conference in 2024 after you left, you remember?
Good to meet you. Are you still in Durham?
No, I'm in France. I'm in Leeds.
Okay.
Roberto, if you excuse me, can I speak 2 minutes in Greek?
Of course.
Να πω ότι χαίρομαι πάρα πολύ που συμμετέχω σε αυτό το καταπληκτικό σεμινάριο και ντρέπομαι γιατί είναι η πρώτη φορά που μιλάω σε σεμινάριο στα ελληνικά, αλλά ήθελα τόσο πολύ. Πραγματικά είναι εξαιρετική η δουλειά που κάνετε, την παρακολουθώ και συγχαρητήρια γι' αυτό. Και αυτό που είπατε πριν από λίγο, Μαγδαλένα, είχατε απόλυτο δίκιο, ότι πρέπει να μελετήσουμε τα αρχαία κείμενα και ειδικά τη θέση της γυναίκας στα αρχαία κείμενα, πώς ξεκίνησε στην μέση κωμωδία σαν ένα τέρας και κατέληξε στα ρωμαϊκά χρόνια να θεωρείται υπέρτατη μορφή seduction και manipulation. So I'm gonna turn in English now.
Yes.
Yes, I think there are at least 3 people of us that probably didn't get a lot.
It was just the introduction. It was not the main question.
I was joking, Efro. I was joking.
Now I'm going to you. So, something that we are dealing quite a long time, me and you, about Hetaira. And the big question, why Hetaira? I mean, from the middle comedy and the palake status that we know in Menandes theater, for example, that has a great role there, we go to Hetaira, another status. And I'm wondering why, it's a matter of discussion, I haven't found the solution myself, why, particularly in the imperial era, all the great authors choose the status of Hetaira and not of another sex worker. Παλακίδα, porni, etc., or avlitris, for example, they choose very particularly the status of Hetaira. And this is something that it keeps me wondering every time I see this in ancient texts.
Thank you, Efro, for the question. I don't know if we have ever discussed about that. I have met Efrosini for the last 2 years, and we are now friends. And she asks, "Can I say the news, Efro? Can I?"
Yes, of course, please.
Okay, we have just received a contract, and Efrosini is actually publishing and putting together all the papers of the conference that we held in Durham 2 years ago. No, it was last year. I can't remember anymore. It was last year in June. Yeah. So
Congratulations. That's amazing.
No, but she's doing all, I have to be honest. And okay, yes. And so we are discussing about these topics very often. I think that Rome is the real actor there, because we cannot think of just of Greek literature after the Battle of Actium in 31 BCE. I mean, Greece becomes a province in that period, or Achaia maybe, and then very slowly also other regions of Greece, basically Asia. So when we talk about Greek literature in the imperial period, I would actually prefer to speak about Greco-Roman literature. But what I think is that when we find Etaira in Lucian, Alciphron, Aristaenetus is of course between the Roman Empire and the Byzantine Empire, so another world. It is because they are mostly thinking of the meretrix, which is the prostitute that we find in Rome and also in Roman comedy. And all the nuances also have a great deal to do with, as far as I can say, with Roman elegy. It's something I also I couldn't expand on this tonight, but all the blur status and the very complicated status of some women in Rome, and the way society was differing from law, and the way law and society were reproduced in literature, is actually the reason why these characters, in a certain sense, become very blurred, and also you kind of lose them. I believe that is mostly, you know, we have studied Etaira for a while. There are all the very traditional scholars that say that these are just comedic stereotypes. They say that they are just reproductions of new comedy. I think it's all bullshit. I mean, at least, I'm sorry, at least until a certain degree.
Okay.
I don't know if this answers your question.
We have another question from Paola Hatslambri. Γεια σου, Paola.
Γεια σου, Paola.
Το μικρόφωνο σου.
Hi. Hello. Hi.
Hello.
Yes. Hi. Hi, Roberto. Thank you so much for enlightening us tonight. And it's a good day from New York for me.
Amazing.
So I've been enjoying this. And Magdalena, I also follow your work and I admire it a lot. And I wanted to ask you, because it's so interesting, this topic, I wanted to ask you about, okay, we are talking about the prostitutes and of course the society and how they were taken and how it all started from the comedy, let's say, making fun of them, and how, you know, the women were portrayed in the comedies as these monsters. And then in the tragedies, you can always see them that they're like manipulative, or they become figures of authority and everything. But in regards to Rome, especially in Rome, have you went deeper? Have you examined also the double role that a lot of these prostitutes had as spies and as messengers in regards to politics? Because there was a lot of political game in Rome, and a lot of times these women, they were kept close to powerful men as their private prostitutes, let's say, or lovers, let's say, but they were there for a reason, and they were serving the politics behind the desire and the lust and, you know, everything else. So I think that was like the means. They were the undercover means to succeed, serving the men, not just physically, but also with the mental. They were gathering information, they were sharing information. How does this interest you, or if you went into that?
Paola, thank you very much for this question, because actually this is one of the points I have in my dissertation, which hopefully one day it'll become a monograph, if I find the time to work on that. I think this is very true, because if you read the Historia Augusta, which is, regardless of the chronology, if you read a lot of that genre that we consider history, you discover the histories, I don't know, of Messalina, Claudia Acte, and some others. I can't remember the name, I'm sorry. They were actually in the court, as you were saying. I can't remember the name of the concubine of Vespasian, but maybe most of these, and the other, the concubine of Commodus, which was a promiscuous woman, which according to the law in Rome means you are a prostitute. These women, of course, were at court. And as you can see, in many cases, they are not actually women supposed to be married, but they are treated like de facto wives because they are at court, of course. But it's also a situation that happens in real society, because I just do a little digression. Law and society are related, but what law says is not what you find in everyday society. You are not supposed to smoke while you drive, but if you go to Rome, you see a lot of people that smoke while they are driving. I don't know here in the UK, but it never happened to me, at least. So what I want to say is that that is absolutely true. And I argue in my dissertation that Alciphron in particular, it's particularly evident with him. I believe that he was at the court of Marcus Aurelius. And so probably he saw directly one of these dynamics you were mentioning. I don't know if he personally met these women, probably he could, or maybe probably he was a philosopher. We have a gloss in English, I think, in Athenaeus that says that he was a Stoic philosopher. And Alciphron, the fictional author, has a lot of Stoic characteristics. So I believe that they might have seen something. And also Justinian, of course, so Justinian, I was already going at the end, also Aristaenetus, it is the 6th century, when he talks about the sex worker and actress who becomes a married wife, I argue that there is 95% sure that he's talking about, what was her called? The wife of Justinian, Theodora, that had been an actress, had been a prostitute. And I think that Aristaenetus there is doing an operation very similar to that of Procopius in the Historia. I don't remember names tonight. It was a long week. The Secret History. But I can't remember the Greek name. And Procopius is actually insulting Theodora and saying, I already told a bad word, I said another one, he says that she was a slut. So it gives another version of Theodora, an official version, but this work was not meant to be published. I believe that Aristaenetus is doing something similar. In fact, we don't know who Aristaenetus was. It is the name Aristaenetus means the praiser of good things, of the best things, is a fictional name. Maybe it was someone in the court that needed a mask, I don't know. Maybe these letters needed to be discovered and, needed to be forgotten forever. I don't know. But what you say, sorry, I digressed a lot because you really open a Pandora box. It's absolutely true.
Oh, no.
No, but I'm happy to talk about this, and I hope that this will be publicly known soon. But when you study ancient sex workers, and I don't know if Efrosini, who also studies these topics, agrees, you always face a lot of conservatorism in our studies, that it's so difficult to get rid of many preconceptions. For example, if you study ancient characters, which is what I've done, you still find very important scholars that I'm not naming, of course, that says that ancient characters don't have a self, or better, that ancients in particular, in general, have not a self. But if you don't have a self, you are not a person. So it just doesn't make sense. And there is a lot of work to do on ancient characters. Yeah. So I hope that more and more people will keep studying these topics, because not just sex workers, but also, I don't know, soldiers, women, I wanted to say all the other characters that we find in from Homer onwards need to be studied with different lens. And I'll shut up now because I don't want to bore all of you.
No,
But
this
thank you
is
so much,
really
Paola.
fascinating, Roberto. This is just creating such a fascinating discussion. And I have another question from someone in the chat. I will translate because she's having problems. Mirto Varaco is having problems with her mic and her camera. So, and she's really thrilled for the lecture. And it's just a comment. She's moved by the reference that performance is a way of protecting the self, that you were talking about how it's a kind of self-preservation strategy. And she found that really moving, as did I, actually. And through and she says, it seems that through the examples that you gave, the catalyst to that makes this boundary collapse between the self and the performance is oftentimes it is love. So
let's talk about that.
So this is the protection that you have. It sort of it collapses through love. And she's asking, do we want to talk about? I mean, of course, it is a very favorite topic of a lot of books, novels, plays, and films. This exact point,
And also modern dating.
Yeah, yes, for sure. For sure, because we are on the apps, and that's a kind of a performance, and it is a kind of defense, isn't it? So, yeah.
Okay, I won't start on that because
but it's
I will be very professional tonight. But what I would like to say, first of all, thank you so much, Mirto. Actually, don't get offended, Mirto, but you have a very nice speaking name because Mirto is also one of the name of the Hetairai in Lucian. And it's the root of Mirto or Myrtion. All these names are related to the myrtle, which can be, of course, the plant sacred to Aphrodite, but also the female genitals. So now it's a name that I really like. But apart from that, yeah, absolutely. When these Hetairai fall in love, it's exactly in that occasion that we find that they are not playing at the they are not role playing as they should do, because if you are gaining money from pretending to love other men and you fall in love with them, of course you are not able anymore to pretend anything. And this is of course true. I mean, this is something that has been studied in particular from the 50s of last century. There is that book of Erving Goffman, The Performance of Self in Everyday Life, and also Richard Schechner, and all the so-called anthropological school of performance studies depends on these studies. So it's absolutely true. But love is always, I mean, I think almost all of us have experienced this. You just don't understand anything, you idealize the other person, and maybe the other person pull away, and you remained alone with your hopes, with your desires. And what is more, which personally I found very moving about these women, is the social condition they are in. Most of all are not rich women. Sometimes we also, this is another misconception. Hetairai were the witty, intelligent, rich women. This is not true. It's true for some of them in Athens. But when you read Lucian, when you read Alciphron and Aristaenetus, you see, especially Lucian, I have to say, that is possibly the most tragic of all of them. You really finish the 15 dialogues crying. Not by chance, the last of the dialogues say there is one of the, actually she's a dancer, but the condition applies to all the sex workers. She says, we should stop going with rich men because they are always, actually, she's referring to people in the army. But she says we should start going with rich people like them because they are always inventing excuses not to pay us. We should go with people that actually can show us something more consistent. Because the problem is that if you are poor, you cannot defend yourself. You just have to get all the money that you can get to make your family thrive as far as possible. In another dialogue, the third of these dialogues, there is a sort of fight between a mother and a daughter. The daughter has been teased by her companion or partner, as you want to call it, whatever you want to call it. And she said, he was disrespecting me. And am I supposed to play the part of the Hetaira? And the mother says, oh, you're always too harsh with that guy. He came to me complaining that you were not doing your job. And she actually is acting out of personal preferences. So she says, he disrespected me as a woman, not as a sex worker. So I'm not doing that job anymore. But the mother reminds her, we have to do that because we are poor. And this is also what Krobile tells Corinna. So unfortunately, it seems that I'm complaining about all the scholarship on these works, but sometimes you read that Lucian in the dialogues of the Hetairae is a very fun author. Personally, I'm not entirely...
I think it's tragic. It's a tragic...
I think it's more tragic than comedic. I mean, sometimes you laugh, of course, because, I don't know.
And do you think that the scholars tend to forget the intersection with the class and the economic situation? I mean, this point is which is really important, I think, in contemporary sort of treatments of sex work, and I think it's crucial because this is exactly as you said. This is what makes them especially vulnerable, and if we leave that out, we must never. If we leave class and money out, then we only have half the story.
There is also another problem. Now, I also, in a certain sense, I mean, I don't want to speak from the perspective of women, but the other problem is that most of these works, thank you so much, Mirto, sorry, but most of these works have been written by men. And I don't want to say, I don't want, of course, to generalize because it would not be fair. But if you read most of the works of the last century, God, you read some papers. I don't know, Afro, if you agree with having read these works. You finish reading papers and books of famous scholars and you say, okay, but how can you give this Mickey Mouse version of women that were enslaved people, were obliged to have sexual intercourses with more than one man? Actually, something that I always tell, and I forgot to say tonight, and this can be a little sensitive. Corinna is probably a very young girl, because the Greek term that is used is basically one denoting a child that has just lost what someone calls virginity, which some studies, of course, say that virginity doesn't exist. It's just something stupid invented by the man. So for our conception, she's a very young child that is obliged to have sex with more than one man, and it's not pleasant, of course.
Yes.
So that's why I say these works are tragic. And also, sorry, last thing I was telling, because then
it's the same thing we have today.
Exactly.
Sometimes sorry, Roberto, today... but it's the same thing. I mean, I totally agree with you that yes, these books, these scholars, they were men. Let's not forget that in ancient times, women were not allowed to learn to read and write. It was only a man's privilege. So that is why we have the ancient, the ancient tragedies written by men, not by women. But there are so many key elements from ancient times and from the scholars that you are mentioning, that you read and you get upset, and the way that these dialogues are portrayed, that actually reflect on what is happening today. I mean, totally even agree. With Corinna, referred to as a child. I mean, every other day it's on the TV about human trafficking and about the children. And personally, I worked with this topic as a professional actress. My last performance was about human trafficking and abuse against women. And it was based on true stories. I think from all the plays I've done in my life, it was the hardest one, because I was portraying 3 women, actually, that they had to become sex workers one way or the other, especially because of human trafficking. But although you think that I related what you said about the discussion with the mother and the daughter that is young. And I also remembered that I had in my monologue, I had such an exchange of information that I did between, let's say, the older prostitute that she was trafficked, and she's also Russian, and she's, you know, tough and more cold, compared to the young girl of 14 years old that they abducted. And she's like, you know, she's still trying to escape. And the other one is like, no, this is what we're going to do. This is, you know, this is the reality now. This is your home. This is your everyday life. And, you know, don't try to do anything. So you just reminded me from this dialogue that, oh my God, you know, it's a similar thing that is ongoing for centuries, actually. And I do hope now that, you know, with scholars being women as well, and things being written by women from the point of view of women, that perhaps, you know, these sensitive subjects will be discussed more freely, you know, bringing out the truth, because this is what you have been doing. And that's why you get upset.
I hope so, but no, thank you, Paola, and thank you for sharing this about your performance. And yeah, I think that now sometimes not all people agree, but doing research is also doing politics. And today can be very difficult, because I think of some countries that I'm not naming tonight, you cannot come out with this research without probably being frowned upon.
Yes.
But regardless of this, I think that we need a collective effort. I think that also men like me, we should also be working toward giving voice to people who were marginalized and were voiceless. I know that sometimes it's not easy, because for many women, we have nothing preserved from the antiquity. We don't have a lot also. For example, my next project is on male prostitution. We have nothing on that either. Almost nothing. It's more complex there, but we try to have to read between the lines of what we have, and try to, as Magdalena was saying, use our lens today to learn from the past, but also making sure that we use this past not to repeat the errors and all the abominous things that we know from the antiquity. I know that it's not easy. Politics doesn't listen to us, but I'm not digressing a lot into that. But if you want to understand, you understand. I hope that, as you were saying, with more women in academia, and possibly with younger scholars like you, Magdalena, Efrosini, we could do something more. And also Magdalena students, that we have to remember that our students are always very important to our society. So they have to know that we care about them.
We do. It's a sacred duty that we have. I'm sorry to be melodramatic, but I agree with you that doing research is doing politics, and universities have a role to play today.
We are victims of the politics. Magdalena, we sometimes, as creators, as performers, we may become victims. Not, you know, you understand, as when we want to showcase our work, for example, sometimes we become victims of the politics of a specific place. I mean, I was fortunate enough to perform in Italy, and I got an award, but when it came to the specific performance to be showcased in Arab countries, I will not name which country, we were excluded. They were like, no, we don't discuss these things. We don't showcase such things over here. And in the meantime, you know that there is also prostitution there, or there is, you know, different other issues. So it's you are spot on. You are both spot on doing politics, but in the right way, that, you know, with academia.
Yes.
The right way, but the in the sense of the direction of the sorry, I shouldn't be saying that.
Our time will come. What can I say? But yes, yes, it's true. I agree. This is going to turn into a revolution, this seminar. No, it's not.
Yeah, exactly.
But yes, it is. There's so much to think about, and in times that where we feel there is around us a kind of a crisis or a oversimplified way of viewing the world, and I think going back to research, going back to teaching, going back to discussions and creativity helps us, above all, to look at everything to look at a subject in a complicated way, to try to get away from the polarization around us, from the black and white that is everywhere at the moment. And I think that's the most important thing that we can ask from ourselves and from our students, is to look at everything as a prism, as a multitude of opinions, as a multitude of aspects, and try with this polyphonic sort of view to find to build a better world and to build a better understanding of the human condition, I guess, in from this complicated point of view. That's all we can say, I think, about this at the moment. But you must watch this film, Anora, Roberto, if you haven't seen it, because
yes.
now that we talked about money and class as well, it's at the intersection of sex work and then that. So it's
Also
really
I put in the
interesting.
chat harlots.
Yes, harlot is like an 18th century. It's like a
Yeah.
Regency period or something, or
18th century, I think. Yes, but you can see this. The cast is excellent, I must say. But also, I saw this summer, but it's of 2017, something like that. But you see this performance that I always say between being a person, so being enamored of someone, and being the bode, which in ancient English means slut, to serve the man. And also, while you were talking, Magdalena, it came to my mind, this is mostly on the blurred line between sex worker and other professions, which relate to the contemporary work. It's a very nice series, which I think has been suspended, and I haven't finished watching, which is called Pose. It's about drag queens in New York.
Yes.
That is great, and you see a lot of these dynamics between being your personal self and maybe a lot of transgender women that want to be, I don't know, a dancer, a performer. They do the drag queen, but sometimes just to make sure they have money, they are also sex workers. But it's very good because it also, I mean, I don't want to digress. I mean, I've said a lot of other things tonight that were more compromising probably, but it also gives voice to all those people, regardless of their gender, that suffered because of discrimination and marginalization during the AIDS pandemic in the 80s. And you can see this is very sad and sensitive, all the people that start to die, get ill and die, and they are in hospitals, nobody wants to touch them. It's not just this, of course, the series is on a lot of other topics, but you still can see how then the category of sex worker is very sleeping, very blurred. And this is something people that are from the so-called minorities know very well. If you do something that doesn't respond to what society tells you to do, you are discriminated because of your being a woman, you're being a transgender, you're being gay or a lesbian, let alone all the racial prejudices that are also in this series, but we still see today.
Yes.
So I really hope that we can do more on these texts and probably give justice to people that have no voice anymore, but also to people that still today, they are alive, but they cannot find expression.
Exactly.
in other settings.
Exactly. Wonderful. Thank you to everyone who
Is this
stayed
something
this
that you
late.
would be interested to look for, Roberto?
Pardon?
Is this something that would be of your interest and point of research?
Absolutely,
the
yes.
drag queens.
Of course.
The reason I am asking is because the youngest son of my husband, he's a drag queen with a great success in New York. He's a very, very big artist over here, and he's into the community actually. And it was a big, also a big school for us to, I mean, and for me coming from small Cyprus, that the drag queen community is not really active in Cyprus, and they're producing some amazing shows, and it's so interesting that, you know, the way they collaborate, the way they protect each other, the way they voice their work, and I think he was telling us that now they are starting to do like a documentary about it, about their world. So if you need anybody, to speak or any questions, anything, I will be very happy to bring you in touch.
Paola.
It just came now because the things that you've said, it's exactly also what we have been discussing with him and his concerns. And, you know, it's a different approach when I am getting ready, let's say, to go and perform, and I know I will come home at night, but it's a totally different stress for us when we know that, yeah, they do have a performance and they are going to go to some place, and at night they all need to be together to leave because you never know.
Of course.
So, yeah, and it's very interesting because doing it right, there are many like
we lost you.
It's not just the drag queens. You have to prostitutes. I mean, in the 50s or in the like, come on, it was, and in Greece also. I mean, you know, I remember that even when we were studying, it was like, you're going to be an actress.
Yeah.
Sure. And it was kind of what? So it is very, very, very interesting to see that, you know, as much as we are moving forward. And I wanted also to, I loved what Magdalena said before about us trying and continuing to do what we're doing with the performances, with the emotions, with the scholars, with the books, with everything, because I think in the end with AI and all this technology and automation, the greatest luxury for people is going to actually be able to buy a ticket and actually go to the theater to see a real person performing, to see real emotions and facial expressions. I think that's where we are heading, because here they already started promoting like performances with AI creations. So
no, live theater has its own.
I totally agree with Magdalena.
We will, we're irreplaceable. Let's hope.
Exactly. No, but that's true.
Because we need.
I think we will be the future luxury.
Yeah, I hope so. Well, look, I mean, we have a few more people. Anything? Anybody else wants to ask anything or comment, or I can maybe stop the recording now.
Oh God, I was saying a lot of compromising things and I was being recorded. I had forgotten that.